Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to really take a close look at the investigative complexities around a truly tragic case, the double homicide of Dr. Spencer Tepe, who was 37, and his wife, Monique Tepe, 39. This all happened in late December of 2025 in their Columbus, Ohio home.
Yeah, and our goal in this deep dive is, to be strictly analytical. We're working from the full investigative report. We want to focus purely on the forensic markers, the timeline, because that's what makes this case so puzzling. The idea is to move past the speculation and just unpack the hard
To
evidence.
see if this was, a random act of violence in their neighborhood, or if the evidence really points somewhere else.
Exactly. Does it compel us toward the conclusion that this was a highly organized, targeted hit?
And the thing is, the analysis starts right away. The crime scene itself had these three huge criminological markers that basically set the course for the whole investigation. First, no forced entry at
No,
all.
none. Second, the murder weapon was just gone, completely absent from the scene.
And third, and this is maybe the most haunting part, their two little kids, ages 4 and 1, were found in the house, physically unarmed.
What's so fascinating is how those markers work. They're immediate exclusions. I mean, the complete absence of the gun. That alone let police rule out murder-suicide within the first hour. It's just off the table.
And when you put that together with no forced entry and the fact that only the adults were targeted,
The whole picture just screams organized, external perpetrator, someone who acted with a very specific intent and, frankly, a remarkable amount of composure.
okay, let's unpack that. We have to start with victimology. You have to understand the Tepe family's life. And what investigators found was a classic low-risk profile.
Very low risk. Spencer was a dentist in Athens, Ohio, known for being kind, great patient reviews. So, the disgruntled patient idea is pretty low probability. And Monique was the domestic anchor, a planner, always the one who would communicate if something was wrong.
And that routine, their reliability, that's ironically where the vulnerability was, wasn't it?
It's precisely where it was. Dr. Tep's life was a schedule. He had a 75-mile commute every single day.
So he had to leave at a certain time.
He had a required observable departure window, sometime between 7 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. He had to leave then to make his first appointments.
Which is basically a public map of their morning routine. For anyone watching that house, it gives them a very specific 30-minute window to exploit.
It doesn't just provide a window, it almost requires a high degree of surveillance. The killer had to know that routine. And critically, his employer, a Dr. Valrose, knew that schedule so well that when Spencer didn't show up, it wasn't just, oh, he's late.
It was immediate crisis.
No.
And it was made worse by the fact that Monique was also silent. She's the one who would have called.
Exactly. Dr. Valrose even said in the initial 911 call that not being able to reach Monique was very, very concerning. The silence from both of them at the same time is what took this from a missed shift to an urgent welfare check. Their own routine triggered the alarm.
Which brings us, really painfully, to this idea of the procedural void. This critical gap in the timeline that happens because procedure and intuition just collide. We're talking about a pretty significant block of time between that first alarm call and the actual discovery.
It's a tragic look at legal constraints. So let's just map it out. At 8:58 a.m., Dr. Valrose makes that first 911 call. He stresses this is totally out of character.
And just 24 minutes later, 9:22 a.m., a Columbus police officer is there at the house for the welfare check.
And here it is. This is the moment that defines the whole timeline. The officer knocks, gets no answer, and this is the critical part. He departs the scene. And for you, the listener, to understand why, you have to look at the Fourth Amendment. Police just cannot enter a private home without a warrant.
Unless there's an exigent circumstance.
Exactly. And the legal bar for that is incredibly high.
Yeah, it means you have to see something, signs of a struggle, blood, or you have to hear something, like screams.
Right. A missed work shift, no matter how weird it seems to an employer, it just doesn't meet that constitutional threshold to force entry. The officer was following protocol to the letter, but the devastating result is that it created this 30 to 40-minute window.
A window where those two small children were alone in that house with their deceased parents. It's a hard thing to process. But it was that same knowledge of their routine, the thing that raised the alarm in the first place, that ultimately broke the deadlock.
It was the exigency, that legal reason to go in. It had to be established by their friends and colleagues. They were all starting to show up at the house, driven by that same alarm.
And it was that human element, the
Yeah.
friends just refusing to accept the silence. At 9:56 a.m., one of them calls 911, and they have the auditory evidence. They reported, "I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell."
And that's it. That is the sound of distress. that one confirmed sound, a child yelling. It provides the immediate, necessary legal justification that was missing before. The rules change instantly once that sound is reported.
And just minutes later, 10:03 a.m., a friend goes in and makes that horrific discovery. Sees Spencer laying next to his bed, off of his bed, in his blood.
So now we have to shift to the crime scene itself, because this is where the killer's forensic profile really starts to take shape. And that pivotal lead is still the lack of forced entry. Police reports are clear. No shattered glass, no pry marks, nothing.
So the killer was either let in or they just walked in.
Which narrows things down considerably. I mean, you're looking at really three main possibilities. First, the known associate. The victims opened the door because they knew and trusted the person.
Okay, that's scenario one.
Second is the ruse. The killer uses a pretext, like a delivery or a utility check, something to get the door open. And third is key access, someone who already had a key to the house.
And what about just an unlocked door?
It's highly unlikely given the outcome. Most burglars who stumble upon people flee. They don't escalate to a double homicide. This feels much more intentional.
And regardless of how they got in, the attack itself was fast. They found 3 9mm shell casings. But the real defining piece of forensic evidence here is the missing weapon.
It is a textbook behavioral marker. I mean, we can say with almost absolute certainty that in a murder-suicide, the weapon stays at the scene. It's always with the final decedent. The fact that the shooter was composed enough after killing both parents to find the gun, retrieve it, and flee with it, that just screams calculation. It's not a crime of rage.
And you can even get some sense of the sequence from the wounds, right? Spencer had multiple gunshot wounds, while Monique had at least one gunshot wound to the chest.
That disparity is important, yeah. It could suggest Spencer was the primary target, or maybe he tried to fight back, tried to defend his wife, and drew most of the fire. Either way, it points to a very rapid, very high-stakes confrontation.
But the most jarring piece of the psychological profile has to be the children. The decision to spare them. I mean, you have this extreme targeted lethality against the parents, but then a hard stop, a boundary against harming the infants.
Precisely. This tells us the killer had a very high level of control, a chaotic, passionate crime, or a psychotic break. Often, everyone is a target. But the decision to kill the parents and leave 2 witnesses, remember, the 4-year-old was heard yelling, it demonstrates a cold, selective intent. The goal was to remove the adults. Period. This just reinforces that targeted hit theory.
So to really weigh these theories, you have to look at the environment, right? Wineland Park. It's a neighborhood that's gentrifying fast, a lot of development.
And with that gentrification comes a lot of socioeconomic friction. The neighborhood has a D+ crime score, high rates of assault, robbery. Statistically, it's a target-rich environment for property crime.
Okay, so the background statistics would suggest, random burglary gone wrong is at least possible, but the evidence just doesn't fit that, does it?
It really doesn't, because this is an outlier. A typical burglar wants to avoid confrontation. They want to get in, get stuff, and get out. This was a double homicide inside the home with no mention of theft. To escalate like that, kill both adults, take the weapon, but leave the kids. It's just completely inconsistent with an opportunistic robber's profile.
So with almost no traditional physical evidence, no weapon, no prints, no forced entry, the investigation had to go somewhere else.
It pivoted almost entirely to the digital world. The surveillance net they've cast is enormous.
They're using everything they have.
Everything. There's a police crime camera just a few hundred feet from the home, so they're pulling that. But the real focus is what they call the digital dragnet.
Which means asking for private security footage.
Yeah.
Ring cameras, Nest cameras, all of that.
From a huge area, a geofence. And they've set a very wide time window for it, too. From midnight all the way to 9:00 a.m. on the day of the discovery.
Midnight is interesting.
It's very telling. It suggests they're considering the killer may have been watching the house for hours beforehand, or maybe even got in and was lying in wait. They're also using cell tower dumps to find any unknown devices that were in that area during that critical time.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, the whole case really hinges on that lack of forced entry. Did the Tippies know they're a killer, or were they just fooled by a very sophisticated trick? And the sparing of the children, that just solidifies the killer's cold, focused intent.
Right now, the investigation is in that critical waiting period. They're running the shell casings through NIBIN, the National Ballistics Database, to see if they match any other crimes. We're also waiting on toxicology, and of course, the deep dive into their finances and communications is ongoing.
So the victim's own routine is what led to the discovery, and the forensic evidence has done a great job of telling us who the killer is not. It's not a family member. It's not a chaotic burglar. They know how this person operates with organization and intent.
The resolution, if it comes, will likely be digital, connecting a phone or a car or a face from a camera to that critical time gap. But here's the final thought to consider. Given the level of planning this killer showed, removing the weapon, the selective targeting, if the victims did, in fact, let the killer into their home, what possible grievance or motive could be so powerful that it was worth the risk of carrying out this attack just moments before Dr. Tepe's daily, observable commute began? The risk of being seen was enormous, which suggests the motive must have been just as enormous and maybe deeply personal.